If you want to see the entire chat with Jeremy Kauffman, you got to go to one of my other platforms that have not recently suspended me. The links are in the description. All right, Jeremy Kauffman, CEO, founder of Odyssey, one of the platforms that I am on. I'm going to show everybody in case you have not started to follow me there. And Jeremy is back on the channel to talk about a lot of things related to big tech, censorship. We're going to talk a little bit about crypto too. We're going to talk about Brett Weinstein making the switch over because we're all getting suspended and strikes and all kinds of things over on YouTube. I really believe YouTube is escalating. And Jeremy, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too. But can we first start with the case from the SEC? We talked about this a few months ago when the news first broke, but is there any update? And maybe we should go back and just, can you explain to people what their charges are against you all and then where the case stands?
Sure. Yeah. So there's a civil case against my company. It's a pretty egregious case, but nothing criminal and nothing that's a threat to what we've built. But Odyssey does use blockchain technology, and that's something that the government is very against. And really, it actually relates to the YouTube situation as well, because what we're seeing is this fusion between big tech and big government, where if you are not, sort of supporting the regime and what the regime once supported, they'll try to squash you any way they can. And so in this case, there's no victim. There's no one that's gone to the government and said, I was hurt. But because we use a public blockchain and because we've continued to improve our technology while also exchanging the cryptocurrency, they say that we're defrauding people, or well, actually, they're not even alleging fraud. They're saying that it's an unregistered securities offering. They're saying we've been completely honest, but every exchange of the token needs to be carefully tracked. If you want to give someone 25 cents, that's got to go through one of these special vendors. You're not allowed to exchange it peer to peer, and they're really trying to make sure that it's really locked down and highly regulated.
How does that differ, real fast? How does that differ from how they would regulate like YouTube, which deals in just normal money?
It differs. They think that cryptocurrency is not money. They think it's a security. So they think you're subject to the same financial regulations that stocks and other financial assets would be subject to. So there's different rules for stocks than there are for cash. So if what we were doing was the equivalent of cash, it wouldn't be a problem. If what we're doing is like a stock, they say, you can only trade stocks through, E-Trade. I'm not allowed to give you a stock. So I have to go through a registered broker dealer. It's a pretty crazy case. And one update, this happened just yesterday. 2 of the 5 SEC commissioners have now broken with the rest of the commission. And they're saying what we're doing is bad. It's wrong. We're being unfair to these people. So if one more commissioner breaks, we'll be in really good shape. But right now, it's not even a consensus opinion within the SEC. 2 of the 5 commissioners are now against this activity that the SEC is doing because the rules are completely unclear. And part of the reason I'm pushing for a court case, I could have settled in this no admit. Then this is what, they like the mafia. They say, hey, give us $1 million, we'll go away. And I said, okay, well, if I give you $1 million, can you tell me how to follow the law in the future? And they said, no, we can't. All we can do is take your $1 million and no, you don't have to admit anything, but we will not tell you how to follow the law. I said, well, I'm not going to do that. Like they say, well, hire lawyers to tell you how to follow. I say, I already did that. They say I'm following it. Well, and then, so it's pretty crazy. They really do. They get us on the phone. SEC got us on the phone. They said, we're going to make this really hard for you if you don't give us this $1 million. We're going to exhaust your expenses. Do you know how expensive it is to fight us? You should really settle with us and just give us this $1 million. Mm-hmm. And I said no, because that's not the kind of person I am. So I'm. Well,
and how do you know it's not going to happen again in the future? I mean,
exactly,
right?
Exactly, and that's all I'm asking for. Is like, I want to follow the law, and I've tried my best to follow the law. That's why they're not charging anything criminal, because they're saying the SEC admits I've tried to follow the law. That we've tried to follow the law. So this way we go to court, and look, they're going to have to get on the stand, and they're going to have to finally answer questions about what I can and can't do. And I've been asking them for 3 years. This and there's not even a dispute of the facts. So they've been drawing this out. They waited until the statute of limitations was about to hit to finally bring the case. They held subpoena power over us for 3.5 years before they finally brought the case, because they were going to run out of time. So they're completely using their power in a way that's simply to be punitive and simply to cause damage to my company, rather than act clearly and give us some rules that we can follow.
I'm curious if you think there is a comparison between the government's sort of seemingly arbitrary set of rules here, or like your inability to understand and interpret them, and say like YouTube, for instance, where you have creators like, say, I'm the Jeremy Kauffman of YouTube. Okay, I'm trying to do something different, and somebody said on my locals page back when I was suspended, and was for really showing how arbitrary the enforcement of their rules is for creators, that one of the methodologies of control, I mean, that person used, authoritarianism as the term, but one of the methodologies of control when you have an infrastructure like that is arbitrary enforcement, because it keeps people self-censoring because they're not sure where they can go, so they do nothing. They're like paralyzed, they don't know the rules, and that's not necessarily a coincidence that it's sort of set up that way to keep people kind of muzzled and scared, so that they just don't go near it at all, because there's no clear delineation of like where the correct path is to go, and you just keep getting shocked in different ways, and so then you're just like, I'm not going anywhere near that fence. You know what I mean? I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, one just comment before I answer this, because we talk about this stuff. I want to really emphasize, like, this does not affect anyone's ability to use it. You will not get in any trouble. They're not going after any users. They're not even alleging anything like that. So you can go onto Odyssey.com. You can earn cryptocurrency for using it today. You can support Allison with your cryptocurrency. You can also support Allison with your credit card. You should probably use your help right now. And so, but just like there's no threat to anything that we're building, and there's no threat to any users. This is just a dispute with the government around what laws we have to actually follow as we do some of these things. But to answer your question, it's very similar. It's a very common tactic with any kind of totalitarian regime, is you have these laws that are very unclear, or rules that are very unclear, and you use them selectively to go after the people that you want to go after. And you can see YouTube is highly political in the ways that they enforce their standards. And it's a complete double standard in terms of who they go after and who they don't. It's the same thing with the government. Under the standard that they're charging us, there are thousands and thousands of companies that have broken this law under the standard that they're alleging for us, probably tens of thousands at this point. There are actors that are clearly bad. We've been very good intentioned. They're going after us because of the other implications of what we do. We enable your First Amendment rights. We enable actually your Second Amendment rights, because we distribute firearms CAD files. And so, if you have that mindset of the government needs to control everything, you have to match what the government says. The agents of the government some of them don't like what we're building. And I'm pretty confident that plays a role as why they're going after us, versus some of these other companies.
And I should give you a chance to just clarify too, or go a little bit deeper. And you were saying you can support creators on Odyssey now with your credit card. That's a change, right? So can you explain that just so that people understand like why? Because I tell people all the time, the level of support you get by watching a video on YouTube, from your audience for just their view is so minimal. Like you have to get hundreds of thousands of views on a YouTube video for what tens of people are worth on an Odyssey. And so can you just explain what your change there is too, so people understand like why it's not just like having free speech part of it, but supporting the creators who are doing the work and doing and the value of, I guess, moving your dollar over to something like an Odyssey.
Yeah, it's just another way to be able to support creators. So we've had the cryptocurrency based tipping and supporting for a long time. But for people who are sort of more centered in the traditional systems, or it's just easy. Honestly, you whip out your credit card. And so it means that you can now support the creators that you like. You can tip them a couple bucks, or you can tip them $20 or $50 or whatever you want to support them with. For the live streams, there will be you can do hyper chats, which is sort of our equivalent of a super chat. And so you can also put your money on one of your comments there to kind of boost it and get it seen. And it's just a way of supporting, like the people who are doing what you're doing of all political persuasions. By the way, when I mean doing what you're doing, I mean being an independent voice, being that kind of that person who's not going to be corrupted by the groups or the agencies that they're a part of, that isn't interested in towing someone else's line, but is interested in speaking their own truth. And we have all kinds of political persuasions on Odyssey. That's actually one of the differences of Odyssey versus the other ones. We have, because it's not some people think it's just a right thing. It's a left thing too. It's really, there's a centrist, a sort of establishment narrative that's you're being pushed that you can't deviate from. And if you're on the left or the right and you deviate from that establishment narrative, then you're at risk.
Right now, just looking at the home screen, there is Irish music, sacrifices to the Church of Nintendo, corgi videos, and I'm not on the homepage, but you can find me too in all of those different options.
You might be farther down. I would hope you're in the news and politics category on the sidebar at a minminimum.
Oh, let's see.
Oh boy. Oh man. I hope I don't get. We'll obviously look into that if you're not there.
I don't know. It's okay. Well, we just need everybody to go over to Odyssey 2 and start pushing Allison Morrow over there, so we end up on the home screen. But anyway, yeah, you're right. I mean, you get a bunch of different people. You've got Kim Iverson and the Young Turks and Kyle Kalinske, and I know, like, let's talk about Brett Weinstein real fast too, as long as we're talking about creators here. So he kind of made a big splash because people aren't familiar, is an evolutionary biologist, was formerly employed at Evergreen State College in the area of Seattle, where I was formerly a reporter. There was this big hoopla that he ended up quitting over, which many of you are probably aware of, and we're not going to get into it. But anyway, he and his wife have been talking a lot about COVID and options for therapeutics, and he got the I word, the eye treatment, not IEYE, but literally letter I, because this part is going to be on YouTube. So anyway, and I should add that we are going to cut this YouTube video short and continue it on the other platforms, but I will let you all know when that's going to happen. So he now has, because he was given a bunch of strikes, or at least I know he had issues right with that one video, and I don't know what else, but I know he's now moved over to Odyssey. So talk to me a little bit about that and what that's been like.
So it's been great to have Brett. I mean, he's a very principled guy, so the fact that he chose us meant a lot to all of us here, meant a lot to me personally, because it really was a good testament that, we're doing it the right way. And there are a lot of things, compared to some of the other ones out there, we're not ideologically pigeonholed. Everything we do is open source, so there's an ability for other people to modify it. We can't, I think even with some of the quote alts, and by the way, I see us as a successor, not an alternative, but they're almost, I'm not saying that they're obviously have better policy than YouTube in some regards, but YouTube had better policy a decade ago, right? So if you create the same thing, but you still have the centralization, you still have it all owned by one party, what happens if leadership changes? What happens if the stockholders or whoever, the equity holders, decide they want to go in a different direction? You do end up kind of trapped again. And because of the blockchain based, decentralized, open nature of what we're building, a lot of our proposition is that we've tied our own hands, and that's part of why you can trust us. Is not only I think we are good people if you scrutinize us. Even if I got the mind virus that made me a bad guy, or whatever, there's not that ability to have you trapped. So you actually, you're following, that actually exists in the same way that Bitcoin does. It doesn't even exist only on Odyssey. It exists on this decentralized network called LBRY that's underneath it. This starts to get pretty nerdy, so it might not make sense, but other other sort of smart nerd people kind of agree with our assessment here, that there's a robustness to what we're building and a lack of an ability to interfere with it that these other ones, really don't have.
I love wine, and my favorite kind of wine is a high-altitude Argentinian Malbec. And now you can get 50% off some of my favorite bottles and 50% off shipping by visiting AllisonWinePromo.com. That's Allison with one L, winepromo.com. These wines come from one of the most isolated winemaking regions in the world, with the Andes Mountains on one side and desert on the other. One of the Malbecs is from the third highest vineyard in the world at 8,950 feet. The reason I love these wines is the altitude means that the UV rays beating down on the grapes is making them work harder, and doctors I talk to say they have higher antioxidant properties. Again, it's AllisonWinePromo.com, Allison with one L, winepromo.com.